My, how far we've come. What's up, team? Welcome back to the channel. Reebok has released its newest version of their famous training shoe, the Nano, and it's called the Nano X2. So what I want to do is compare it with its previous versions, the Nano X1 and the Nano X. I've owned all three versions up to this point. I've owned some older versions of the Nanos as well, but these so far have been my main training shoes over the past 3 to 4 years. So I want to compare them across 5 different domains so that you have a better idea of which one might be best for you if you plan on picking up a pair. For visual reference, in case you happen to skip the intro, this is the Nano 10, this is the Nano 11, and this is the new Nano X2. So let's go ahead and talk about each one in the 5 different domains of overall design and look, functional construction, weightlifting performance, running performance, and price and variability. Each one of these are going to be rated on a 5-point scale, and just keep in mind that these are all my own personal opinions based on my use of each of these shoes. So feel free to inject your own personal bias into this as well, but these are my 5-point scoring systems, and we're going to rank each one and give you a final score at the end so that you can maybe pick out which one is best for the scenario that you're wanting to buy them for. Let's go ahead and start with the Nano X2 because that's the one that most of you are probably curious about. Okay, so our first category is overall design and look, and I'm kind of impressed with how this looks. I really like that it has all these different patterns that run along the backside of the shoe. They've done a really good job of integrating some of these more functional, sturdy pieces for keeping the shoe together in a more streamlined way. And overall, that's probably what I would say about this shoe in general, is that it's very streamlined. It has a nice low profile. Keeps things from looking too bulky and too out of the ordinary. I specifically like this colorway from all the ones that were released. The black and white just kind of fits good with a bunch of other stuff. I like how they've integrated the Reebok logo into the design of the shoe a little bit more, with the upper pieces being a little different from each other. I think just the way that all of it blends together is nice. But there are a few features that I would say are probably not going to land it in that perfect category. Maybe for some people it's just a little bit too much going on. I personally like this, but maybe for a lot of people it's not your cup of tea. Overall, it seems a little like a clunky shoe. I'm really used to more flat, minimalistic footwear, so this isn't something that I'd want to go walking around in the real world. I just think it looks a little bit too built up, not something that I would consider casual outside of the gym. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. It's a pretty generous score, I think, but there's a little bit of room for improvement as far as the overall design is concerned. Next is functional construction, and I'm gonna give this shoe a 4.5 out of 5. This is really, really well-built shoe, especially compared to its direct predecessor, the Nano X1. I feel like the flex weave on top of this is nice and tough. You can even hear how scratchy that is. It stands up to a lot of the beating that the shoe takes when it's in the gym. So I really, really like the flex weave material quite a bit. The medial construction of the shoe, so the inside of the shoe, is really well built. I think it can handle all the ropes will add to that. If you're a CrossFitter, you're gonna be doing some rope climbs, and that's specifically what I think this inside is built for. There's sort of a lip sort of hanging off the edge of the shoe a little bit. I don't know if you can tell where it kind of breaks off right there, but that adds a lot of sturdiness to the shoe when you're doing rope climbs. And when I did them, I felt like my shoes were not gonna slide off, they weren't gonna break, and I liked it a lot. The float ride technology that's built into the sole is really good for running. It offers enough cushion, exactly where you would want it to offer cushion. Most people don't run with the best running form, let's be honest. It's really easy for a lot of us to heel strike, especially if running is not our main thing, and having a little bit of cushion to try to help protect from some bad heel striking is really beneficial for a cross trainer, and they do a really good job of getting enough of that in there wherever you need it. One of the slightly better upgrades from the Nano X1 that I noticed is the heel clip at the end. It's made of this tough plastic that has a little bit of shine to it, and it handles really well when you're kicking up against the wall to do handstand push-ups or handstand holds, things that are going to require the heel to sort of move up and down on another object. This handles really well and it's built up really nicely. The tread pattern is mostly the same as the Nano X1, and I really like its grippiness. It doesn't slide around too much and it hangs on to the road or the mats or whatever you are running around on, jumping on. It does a really good job with that. And I also noticed that the toe spring in general, which is how much the shoe sort of flares up in the front, is way less than the Nano X1, which minimizes a little bit of that forward rolling onto your toes when you're doing weightlifting and other things like that. So that's a really good bit of functional change to the shoe as well. One of the other things that the Nano X2 improved on from the Nano X1 is sort of this heel counter. On the X1, it was a little bit more raised up and rather sturdy. It's not as sturdy at all with the Nano X2, and it's a little bit more comfortable, so it won't rub the heels in a really awkward way. The tongue has a nice gusset through it that you can tie the uppermost laces through that'll kind of keep it mostly in place, but I do notice that it still kind of does tend to want to slide from one side to the other, and it's not super kept in place. It's better than the Nano X1 was, but still something that I think needs a little bit of improvement on. Because the heel counter is so much smaller compared to the X1, it also creates sort of this weird shallow feeling around the ankle joint. So where the foot sits all the way up to where the ankle kind of shows, I feel like it's really easy for my foot to want to slide out of the back if I don't have my shoes tied really, really tight. And I'm not somebody who personally likes to tie their training shoes super tight. I want a little bit of looseness so that my foot can breathe some. So one of the things that I do notice is that my foot does tend to slide a bit, and that's something I don't like as much. That's part of the reason why I give it a 4.5 instead of a 5 overall. Next is weightlifting performance, and I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5. The Nano X2 has a 7mm drop from heel to toe, so it's a decent lift of your heels, especially if you've got, ankle joints that aren't moving super well and you're really stiff and you need a nice little workaround for something like front squats or Olympic lifts. That's a benefit, that's really good. But I struggle with how much of the float ride stuff is built into this, and the sturdiness is not quite all the way there. And even though the toe spring is less than before, it still does exist a little bit. So that mixed with the shallow ankle cuff kind of makes the shoe feel a little unstable for heavier lifts for me. So I'm gonna give that a 4 out of 5 just for those reasons. Running performance, I'm gonna give this shoe a 4.5 out of 5. I mentioned some things earlier when talking about functional construction. This shoe is super lightweight. It's got cushion in all the right places where you would need them. And overall, it's not that bad to run in overall. Finally, let's talk about price and variability. Right now, this shoe sits at $135, which isn't bad for a training shoe, especially because of where the shoe market is right now and inflation and all that fun stuff. So $135 to get a pair of these, and currently the color options are a little limited. So we're at 6 color options for guys, 4 color options for women. So that's sort of where we stand as far as the price and variability is concerned. So I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I'm sure that'll improve over time as they start to come out with more. This is a recent shoe. So with all of the categories together, we end up with a total score of 20.5 out of 25 for the Nano X2. Let's go ahead and move on to the Nano X1 and see how it scores. All right, so let's talk about the Nano X1. Let's go ahead and start with overall design. When this shoe came out, it's a direct contrast to the Nano X. They could not be more different of a shoe, and for that reason, there were some things that I liked about this, but also some things that I wasn't quite a fan of. And in general, I felt like this shoe was just trying to find itself a little bit, especially when you compare it to the current Nano X2. So I give this a 4 out of 5. This shoe was sleek and streamlined, especially compared to the Nano X. But there were a few design choices that I wasn't as big a fan of. The launch colorways of this shoe didn't really give me that many options as far as styling goes with how I like to match my shoes with my training stuff. So I went with this white and gum trainer with some black. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the really small logo on the heel with sort of this hidden logo throughout the rest of the fabric. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but overall, as far as a sleek, streamlined training shoe that will look decent with regular clothes if you want to wear them like that, or in the gym with other stuff. I give this a 4 out of 5. Let's talk about functional construction. I give this a 4 out of 5 because there were 2 different types of material that were released for the Nano X1. It was the Flex Weave and the Nano Grit. I only bought the Flex Weave version. I actually didn't buy multiple pairs of this shoe like I had with Nanos in the past. And I bought this material because I thought it was going to be a little bit more softer and movable compared to the Grit. After the fact and feeling some of the grits that other people had purchased, they're both really flexible, but the Flex Weave was not nearly as tough as the Grit was. The upper for the Flex Weave was definitely soft, but I feel like it's just a little bit too soft and couldn't really take the beating of ropes and nicks and scratches and bumps, and just wouldn't hold up as much as the Flex Weave that's on the Nano X2 or the design of the Nano X, its predecessor. The medial construction of the shoe is still pretty good. It comes out a little bit, gives enough stability through the midfoot, but also creates a nice environment for gripping onto the rope if you like to do rope climbs. The heel clip on the backside is there. It's enough to handle the wall, but not nearly as raised out or built in, I think, as the X2. So it kind of goes down a little bit on that construction. The Nano X1 has the same float ride cushioning through the outside underneath, and has similar tread pattern as the X2, so it handles the road pretty well, gives you a nice cushion where you need it. The tread pattern is great. I haven't worn through that hardly at all. It has a really good grasp to it. So overall, the construction is okay, and I like it. Next, let's talk about weightlifting performance. The Nano X1 actually gets the lowest weightlifting performance for me at a 3.5 out of 5, mainly because the 7mm drop from heel to toe, in addition to the cushiness of the float ride and the massive toe spring that is implemented in the shoe, just makes it way unstable for heavier lifts for me. I need something that's a lot more sturdy and can also transition into plyometrics and running and other things like that. So the X1 for me, not that great for lifting, but when you consider where its strength is, it can be a useful cross trainer in some other instances. And that brings us to our running score. I actually give this a 5 out of 5. As a running shoe, this has been my favorite so far. It's very, very lightweight. It's actually lighter than the X2 and the X when I put them on my feet and compare them side by side. This feels really, really good. Like with the X2, it offers all the cushion that you would want in the correct areas, but the toe spring actually helps a little bit with rocking the foot forward if you're a very heavy-footed runner. Being able to go out on a run and come inside and do some box jumps or some burpees, things like that, the shoe handles really well for that kind of stuff. Not as great in weightlifting, but definitely really good for running. Price and variability for this shoe, I'm gonna give a 5 out of 5 as well, because this one currently sits right in the middle as far as having a ton of color options and a couple of different pricing structures as well. Some of them are the regular $135, maybe that's the Grit or the Flex Weave. Some color options are at $135, but there's 15 plus color options between men and women for both types of shoes. You can even get some on sale as of today, which is $423 for $84.97. And I think that's a pretty good deal for picking up one of these just to try out and see if it's worth the budget option for you. Overall, despite its downfalls with weightlifting, this shoe gets a 21.5 out of 25, which edges it a little bit over the Nano X2, but take that with a grain of salt. Look at the things that matter the most to you and whether or not that score kind of lines up with what you're preferring. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the Nano X. Overall design, I give this a 5 out of 5. This may ruffle a few of your feathers depending on what your preferences are as far as style and look go, but I love the design of this shoe from the moment it came out. It has way different look to it than any other Nano in the past. Everything up to the X and everything after the X, completely different from what this thing produced. And I almost wonder if they went this way because it was the 10-year anniversary shoe. They just wanted to kind of make something that was special and different. But the design of this kind of has a cool 80s, 90s, edgy sort of high top look to it, the way that it comes up through the back with the massive tongue in the front. They stuck with the same outsole, bottom portion that the Nano 9s had, which was a super popular shoe at the time. A lot of people loved the Nano 9s. The different materials that were used in this construction of the shoe, the way they layer in the design of the logo and putting cool little things here and there on the eye sockets and in the backside, I really, really liked the way that this shoe looked, so I give it a 5 out of 5. Okay, so functional construction. I give this shoe a 4.5 out of 5. This is overall the most sturdy of the three. It's very well built and can handle everything from kicking boxes or running in water or climbing the rope. This thing can handle a lot, and it's really, really tough. It has a really good tread pattern, although over the course of the last 3 years or so, you can kind of see that I've worn that down. It's getting a little bit slippery at this point. But besides that, it has a really good tread pattern and can handle quite a bit. The shoe offers a relatively wide toe box, which is great for your feet. And in general, all three of these do. Compared to a bunch of other types of traditional training shoes or casual shoes, these offer a relatively wide toe box, which is great for people who don't want their feet to be compressed into a tight shoe and give your toes some room to breathe. The medial construction is really nice and strong and can handle the ropes super well. The bottom portion of the backside of the foot and the underside of the heel sort of blend up a little bit higher and can take a bunch of that rubbing force. The flex weave material, nice and strong, takes a lot of abrasions and hasn't broken down over the 3 years that I've had this shoe altogether. I have 2 other versions of the Nano 10s, and each of those handle everything quite well. So I'm very, very happy with the overall construction and design of this shoe. Weightlifting performance, I give this a 4.5 out of 5. This thing is near perfect when it comes to a cross trainer that can handle weightlifting and plyometrics all together. The stability and responsiveness of this shoe for heavier weightlifting is great. I especially like how wide they made the backside of the heel to just give that extra level of sturdiness, and there's no lateral sway or instability with the shoe. It's built up around the ankle pretty well. It gets you nice from behind, and the tongue sort of hugs the foot in a way that makes me feel really good when I'm trying to lift heavier weights. For some people, the raised up look of this shoe, especially with the tongue, it's not their favorite. It's not really their cup of tea, but for me, specifically with the weightlifting, that's a really, really good design choice. This shoe also, in comparison to the X1 and the X2, has a 4mm heel to toe drop instead of 7. So it's not quite as raised up for the heels, which for some of you may be a deal breaker when it comes to weightlifting, but the added stability of this is enough for me to enjoy using this a little bit more than the other two. For running performance, this definitely scores the least out of all 3 of these. I give it a 3.5 out of 5 because it's just really heavy. This thing is like a rock to the other 2 being like paper airplanes. It's heavy, it's clunky. For running, it's just not my favorite. There's enough cushion in there that you can get away with some running, but it's not my favorite. It's kind of uncomfortable. So I'm gonna score that one a little bit lower. As far as price and variability goes, I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5. For how old the shoe is, there are plenty of color options still available that you can get on Reebok.com, and you might even be able to get some other more obscure color options on Facebook Marketplace or something like that. There's like 5 color options for guys, 3 for gals, and the shoe currently, as of 4/23, is running at $74.97. So this is the cheapest Nano that you can purchase at this moment from Reebok's website. Overall, I give this shoe a 21.5 out of 25. Sort of the inverse of where the Nano X1 was, where it performed really well in running but not as great in weightlifting. This one just kind of flips a little bit. Great for weightlifting, not that great for running. So pick based on what you feel like is most important for you. Overall, guys, based off the scores that I've given to these shoes, I'm gonna go ahead and let you know which one is my favorite, and I'll kind of explain why the one that you might expect is not my favorite. And my favorite, actually, out of all 3 is the Nano 10. This one I've had for such a long time now, and I always go back to it as one that I wanna wear for most of my workouts. The stability that it gives me with the weightlifting is worth the trade-off from the running, because I find myself doing a lot more of that kind of stuff mixed in with my fitness than I do with running in CrossFit workouts that may have barbells and rope climbs and other things like that. The lowest scoring shoe out of all three of these, only by 1 point, but still overall, was the Nano X2. And it kind of begs the question of, am I moving away from Reebok as the training shoe of choice? I've been wearing Nanos all the way back since I started CrossFit in 2016. My very first pair was the Nano 6, then I got a pair of the Nano 7 Flex Weaves, then the 8s, then the 9s, the 10s, the 11s, and now the 12s. And I've been a continuum of Nano faithfulness all the way through, but it's getting to the point now where Nano is starting to do some things that, in a training shoe I'm not a big fan of, and I may have to consider trying something different, see if it's better for my foot and my new preferences when it comes to shoes. Overall, guys, this video is meant to sort of guide you in a couple of the different areas that I found important when it comes to picking a training shoe. And if you're in the market for grabbing something like the Nano, I think it's well worth understanding what are some of the pitfalls and some of the over-the-top great things that the shoe offers. Always understand, though, that there are different brands out there, and I'd be completely open to trying different ones, specifically if you have some that you think I should review and try out for myself. If you have any questions or comments about what we've talked about here, just go ahead and leave those down in the comments section. That's always a great place for me to figure out what you guys want to hear about and what you want to learn more of when it comes to fitness gear and health and movement. Am I happy with my Nano X2 purchase? Yeah. But to be completely honest, I probably would have preferred waiting until they went on sale later this Christmas for like half the price, because I personally don't feel like they are worth the $135 upgrade year over year like they used to be as new Nanos started to come out. And that's kind of why I'm starting to move away from worrying so much about picking these up. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please smash that like button. That really helps the YouTube algorithm push this stuff out to more people like yourselves. And if you like watching videos on fitness gear reviews, health education, and movement tips, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that bell icon for notifications. That way you'll be notified every time a new video posts. As always, guys, keep training hard, enjoy your life, and I'll catch you in next week's video.